we've always been figuring stuff out unknowingly, subconsciously to overcome the challenges or the impairments of ADHD. And now we understand why they're there. And that's why I'm sharing the strategies and routines I created and I figured out. And that's what I'm sharing with other high achieving ADHD entrepreneurs. It's a brain thing. Yeah. Why fight it? Understand your brain? Now we know what to do. Control the environment. Come up with routines.
Hello and welcome to the Breakfast podcast. I am your host, David Mancilla. Today we are doing one of our first episodes where I am actually interviewing my guest live. It's been an incredible experience. I think some of the first episodes 3 years ago we did it live with the guest in our studio, but since then we have moved places. So I feel very blessed to have André with us. Welcome, André.
Thank you, David. Pleasure to be here.
And André was in our podcast already, but I wanted to bring him back since it's been a couple of years. And the issue of ADHD is one of the things that almost wrecked my life last year. And André was such an amazing person that he actually told me that I had ADHD back in 2021.
You didn't believe me.
And I didn't believe you. And since then, I almost lost my wife. I almost lost my business. I was a wreck. And then when I separated from my wife, I remember what you said. And I got checked. And sure enough, I had ADHD. And I had it all my life. And I don't consider ADHD as a disease. I think it's a superpower. But a superpower without getting it controlled could kill everybody, right?
Yeah, not managed.
Not managed.
Yeah, when it's undiagnosed ADHD runs rampant,
right?
That's when we run into a lot of challenges. And that becomes an impairment.
Right.
Right? And if we just manage that impairment, then we can convert that into our strengths.
So, André, tell me for the audience, just a reminder, your full name, where do you live, what do you do for a living?
My name is André Brisson. I live in southwestern Ontario, just an hour outside of Kitchener in a little town called Ingersoll, Ontario, Canada. And I started with engineering. I got an engineering company and also started tactical breakthroughs from the impulsive thinker. So I'm also known as the impulsive thinker and got diagnosed severe ADHD. I'm also on the autism spectrum as well. And that just completely explained 40 years of my life in detail.
Wow.
So I really hyper-focused and dove deep to get an understanding of it. And, then I developed the ADHD simplified model. Just made a lot of sense and clarity. And that was basically the conversation we had was, there's nothing wrong. I'm starting to say ADHD is not a medical condition. It's a societal condition. Our brains are wired differently and it's not meant for the world. The analogy is it's a hunting brain, but we're in a farmer's world now. So they don't, everyone sits down, everyone does things and you show up to work and they just produce. Well, we need to be on the go, and our impulsivity is actually a natural trait that was required as a hunter or as an entrepreneur. Right. The reason we started our company is because it was rapid fire impulsivity requiring quick decisions and always on the go.
And laser being focused on something that we like.
Right, exactly. And the environment is not set up for the ADHD brain is what I realized. So that's why we have emotional dysregulation challenges, because we're constantly told we're not doing things properly, right? The analogy I came up with today actually was, if you go in at a forest and there's 20 lions there, you're going to be on edge. You're going to be freaked out. You're going to have emotional challenges. Everyone has emotional dysregulation. It's just that when we're put in that environment, we're on edge. We'll react quickly. But if we go to the zoo and we got our glass between us and the lions and he lunges at you, you're okay because it's a different environment that's safe for you. So I'm all about environment control. If we are able to control our environment, then our ADHD is managed in a way that we can succeed, because the world does not see our traits as a positive because it doesn't follow the normal course. And that's what I'm all about. Let's identify the unique David. What are your unique talents and traits? And stay in there, because if that's, we have a challenge of staying interested. The ADHD brain has 4 conditions to do things. It has to be interesting, challenging, novel, and urgent. So if we have all 4 conditions, we're after it, we're doing it. But if there's not a lot, then it's hard to get into it. Or if we lose interest and it's no longer challenging, then we'll fall out of grace with that. And, since I'm on a rant now, the ADHD simplified model I've developed is ADHD is an executive functioning deficit. Our brain is just not wired to plan long-term, set up plans, tasks, and, setting goals for long-term. And the other thing too is we're actually time blind. ADHD has a massive time blindness. So that's like saying it's a nearsightedness of the future. It's hard for us to see down the road because our time frame is now or not now. I'm only going to deal with what's now. I don't care what something could be 2 minutes from now. It's just not now. We deal with the now. So we're time blind. So that's why we lose track. Sometimes that's when we feel urgent to get something done quick now because we'll forget it. So my time horizon is 2 weeks. I can't plan any further than that. I lose track of stuff, and that's forever. And then the other one is that our brain has a challenge with inhibition. A prefrontal cortex does not inhibit a reaction like everyone else does. So that's why that's where the impulsively comes. And people accuse you don't have a filter. You're right, I don't. This part of the brain's not stopping everything to assess. So the prefrontal cortex says you got an urge. The brain will say, well, let's slow down. Is there a threat? Yes or no? How should you react? Okay, this is how we're going to react. Our ADHD brain goes, threat, out. And then the brain catches up with, oh, I think that was a bit of an overreaction. So it's a challenge of inhibition, neurologically, and having those 3 basics, we don't have to chase dopamine or whatever. Just people are trying to make sense of a lot of complex science. But having those 3, manage those 3, then all the typical ADHD symptoms of hyperactivity, impulsivity, inattention, and emotional dysregulation gets controlled or managed. And if you create the ADHD structure model that I have, is again, we start with environment. So at the top, the environment is key to managing our symptoms, which also has to do with habits and routines. Create our routines, new habits for a routine, control the environment, then there's no reason why the symptoms are when we're being repressed. It's almost as if it's a repress and we act out. So we have that ADHD structure based on the ADHD simplified model. Then it's like, it's a whole different ball game. And like you said, it has to be all based on what you're great at, because it's very hard for us to do things that we have no interest in. So we actually have to focus. That takes a lot of mental energy drain. So mental energy management with habits, routines, and environment control helps us because we have limited executive functioning energy. So if we're going to burn it all in the morning, we're going to work extra hard during the day to get stuff done that we don't want to do or we don't like. And then we actually get more sensitive, the emotions run high, and we just get burnt out by the end of the day.
It's incredible because what triggered me to look for help was when I finally had to separate from my wife. You guys gotta understand, I've been married for 34 years and my wife is my best friend. And I acted out so badly most of my life, but especially in the last 2 years, that I completely abandoned her because of the pursuit of making more money and more traveling and businesses and not,
satisfying the ADHD urge.
Yeah. The traveling part was that got me because I was addicted to traveling. And I had it under the excuse that I needed to go travel to make more money and find more clients and all this and that. And the company was growing exponentially. So I had a self-excuse because I didn't know what was triggering me to travel so much. And I had done it for over 15 years anyway.
You have justification for it without understanding the why. That's what...
But what happened to me is like at the end, it was when I was 49, it got worse. It's almost like I had it kind of managed throughout my life, even though I could see a lot of problems around it, but also a lot of success. But it was kind of managed. Otherwise, I wouldn't be married, for 34 years. But in the last 2-3 years, it got out of control as I progressed and I grew in my business, and I was able to start creating a self-managed company. When I had more time and more money, I could travel more.
Yeah.
And because I had this excuse in my mind, that will actually get me away from home more and more until I started neglecting my wife. And I actually started neglecting my business too, for that excuse,
right?
But
the other thing too is you created such a big habit of traveling, and then when there was nothing, when you first started, you needed to travel to get more work. We needed to do certain things to build our company. But then once it got successful, because I came to the same thing too with my first engineering company, I lost that because of my undiagnosed ADHD. When we got successful and we're doing well, it was boring for me.
Exactly.
Because there was no problems to solve. We didn't have to go get more work. It was working well. So I became an arsonist. So I was creating my own fires to put them out. I didn't realize I was the arsonist. Yeah. So these are all habits that we created. I mean, for me, we're both hyperactive. So traveling really satisfies our brain because we're in motion. And you created such a habit to be on the road all the time. It had, not knowing what you know now is you want to maintain that habit because that's what worked in the past. But now that we know it's an ADHD brain thing, it's a hyperactivity thing, we can now manage and correct, or like you've been doing, travel hiatuses or would you call it fasting?
Travel fasting.
Travel fasting. So big long periods of no travel and then a bunch of travel. So you found a unique way to still satisfy your hyperactivity, but yet be more aware of what's going on, because that's the other thing too. Sometimes undiagnosed ADHD, we have a lack of self-awareness or what's going on around us. But I think it has a lot more with our past trauma and mental health conditions. Like, I've had a lot of childhood trauma, which dictated how I was going to do things, and the stories I told myself about myself and what the people around me, you start to believe that, and that's what's dictating. And the one thing I want to clarify to the people listening right now is what we're talking about is undiagnosed ADHD days. We didn't do this on purpose, because I've been throwing at you. I can't believe you consciously ignored your family. You consciously did it. I said, we did not consciously do it. Our brain was coming up with our own maladaptive systems to overcome these symptoms we had no idea about. So it's not that we did it consciously. We knew that we're doing certain things, but I justify too. I need to travel more. I need to work longer hours so I can bring more money so my family can have a great future and we don't have to worry about money. And that just became so ingrained that it became a habit, and we just got to get out. And with our diagnosis, that we got clarity is, I don't have to. Like the other day, I actually figured out we're always in a rush. The ADHD brain, we believed we need to be in a rush because of urgency, but those are two different words. I don't need to always be in a rush. I can still have urgency, but that's not rush. So it's like, now I'm at, like today, I was half hour early. So like I could have done something else to fill in that half hour so I could leave, so I get here on time like my old self, but I'm like, I know I'm going to be late because I start one thing and our time blindness goes, it's only a 5-minute job. Turns out to be an hour, then you're late. So I'm like, I'm just going to slowly come down, nice countryside drive, sun out in the fields. It was beautiful, right? But 5 years ago, I'd be late, say, sorry, David, I'd lost track of time. But now that what we know now, and what I respect about you a lot is that I think we've always been self-aware. And that's what I think drew me to you. Self-aware, working on yourself, and just not knowing that ADHD side. To me, that was that last piece of the puzzle to keep my bridge life up. Got a lot more clarity, but it takes a lot of work and courage to say, I have not been a good person. Now that I know it's ADHD, I know it's not my fault, but I'm still responsible for my past. And what can I do now to make the future better?
Yeah, it's funny because so you told me in 2021 I had ADHD in our first dinner when we were really buddies, but we went out for dinner. I completely ignored it, and then everything happened, and then it was last year when this, the atomic bomb exploded in my life, And so the first thing I did is I watched a YouTube video from one of our business groups. This doctor had like a self-assessment, like a 10 symptom thing. I had 9 out of those 10. Yeah. So then I got very scared. Then I went to Dan Sullivan, our business coach, and I asked him, Dan, do you think I have ADHD? And he says, well, David, let me tell you something. 30% of my students had it, and 64% haven't been diagnosed. Yeah. That's what he told me, right? So I got really scared. But at the same time, I had some hope. I was already living by myself. I actually separated for 2 months with my lovely wife. By the way, I told her today, her birthday is coming up, and I told her, it's a privilege to be here with you because I don't deserve it. But I went to a psychoanalyst, and this is another miracle. As you know, I'm a man of faith, and I'm a born-again Christian. So the first thing that I did is I went back to my faith. Through 30 years of running with ADHD, building my life. I mean, like, you and I are very successful people compared to the rest of humanity. So I lost that compass. I think if I would have kept in my faith, if I would have kept going to church and reading the Bible, it would have helped me at least have some guiding rails without really knowing that I had the condition. But anyways, after 30 years, the first thing that I did is, when I got into chaos, I went back to my faith. And then I asked my sister to see if she had anybody that could see me, and she's like, yeah, my mentor. And so she's a psychologist in Toronto. She's been a psychologist for 20 years. And her mentor, thank God he was still alive. This is last year. Her name is Gary. And he turned out to be a psychoanalyst that had ADHD, and because of that, he became that. So his PhD was on ADHD.
Right.
And he was like heaven sent, because he understood me,
That's a big challenge, to find a psychologist or psychologist that understands adult ADHD, because it's still a kid thing. Everything's written for kids. So that's the key thing, is to find someone who understands adult ADHD.
And one of the things he told me is that I was a narcissist. And it's funny because my wife, when we used to fight, he used to tell me that I was a narcissist. But I always ignored it because I didn't even know what it meant. When my psychoanalyst told me, yes, you had ADHD, he went through a whole bunch of tests with me, and he says, you had ADHD and you're a narcissist. And by the way, it's a trait of ADHD people that become successful. And then I asked, what is a narcissist? Because I didn't know. And then he said, well, you think you're God, basically. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I started saying, okay, so all my behavior is because I had this condition that I didn't manage. So, but he also told me, yes, and what you're saying is what I'm about to tell you. You also have the victim mentality.
Right.
And then he said, if people with mental conditions were not responsible for their actions, we're going to have jails and mental health institutions filled with people that kill babies and do horrible things because they are sick in their brain. Mm-hmm. So you're still responsible for your actions, right? That's when my wall sank. But also, that's when God shined the light on me, because identifying my horrible traits, narcissism, victim mentality, it gave me compassion for my wife. Mm-hmm. And when my wife found out that I had ADHD and she didn't know what it was, and I explained to her, our healing process began. Because then she understood. And you know what? We actually got a book that a wife of an ADHD person wrote. Yes. And that book helped us so much, because my wife felt finally understood. Because I had the victim mentality. I was blaming her for everything wrong in my life. And I was going around my social circle telling everybody, including her mom, that it was her fault, not mine. And because I had the victim mentality, and I'm cute, I'm just kidding, people believed me. So she was always, people were always against her, putting her as the bad person, and I was the poor guy that was being oppressed by my wife.
Yeah. So what our get off that a little bit, pull something out of that. Like your narcissistic tendencies was actually because you're undiagnosed ADHD, try to fit in a world that doesn't accept you. That was your brain coming up with a maladaptive way to make you go, right? If that makes sense. So you started to, in order for you to have the confidence to start a company, you almost needed these narcissistic traits so you can move forward and become an achiever. And if you would have known you had ADHD at that time, it would have come out as narcissistic traits, but that was your brain being able to deal with the trouble that you're having and you not knowing, if that makes sense. So that's what a lot of people with ADHD gets misunderstood is you're a narcissist, you're very stubborn, or you're just crazy. But it's our brain protecting us. So the brain was trying to protect you from failure by giving you these narcissistic traits so you can move forward. And based on your past history, what I understood based on our conversation, you never had a really good, a very positive thing or thought about David as you're growing up. So how do we feel better about ourselves when we start playing a character that's better than the little shitty David?
Yeah.
That becomes a narcissistic trait for some people, or overly confident. So those are actually all protective mechanisms our brain did, because our brain's great to protect us. It's just that sometimes what they do, we don't have an understanding. It gets misunderstood or out. And the one thing I want to point out, because you needed the separation of your wife to have your come to Jesus moment.
Literally.
Yeah, literally. But for me, I had a life tempest. 3 massive storms hit at once: business, family, personal. And that's the problem is right now is ADHD is only diagnosed when we have problems. So it would be very nice to be able to say, hey, this is your brain structure. This is how your brain works, and have some sort of assessment to say, before shit hits the fan, part of my French, how can we get these diagnoses before we have problems? Because that's what, for kids, they're problematic. They become ADHD. With my kids, I saw the signs. I got them diagnosed before life got rough. So again, it's our brain trying to protect us that creates these narcissistic or whatever mechanism it did to be able to protect you so you can move forward. And yes, you might have been the victim attitude. You could have been the victim that just curled up in a corner, but at the same time, you're a fighter. I think we both got a fighting instinct. No one's going to keep us down. We're going to go. And to do that, the brain has to trick us. But still, I had the victim attitude too. I never really realized it to the extent that I had it till you mentioned it. But yeah, it was everyone's fault. But that's the only way I should survive, because I had no respect for the André inside.
Yeah.
So to have this clarity to say, oh, it's a brain thing. It's not a moral failure. You don't suck. My upbringing, the environment I was in back there was not conducive to my well-being. So you made changes. I made changes. I've let things behind. I've left people behind. But this is what this is all about, is everyone's different and unique. We all have unique traits and talents, and we just got to be able to start valuing each other's differences to come to the same end goal. Respect is not enough. I can't just respect your traits, because if I don't value you, I can still respect you but not value you, but I'm not going to give you the time and name. But tell them you can value each other's differences, the world's going to keep being the way it is.
You know, looking back, I think COVID is the thing that started exploding my condition. Because before COVID, I had set trips, right? My wife was coming with my trips, and it wasn't so often. I mean, it was pretty often, but not as often as after. When I got incarcerated, because we live in Canada and we got stuck for 2 years, most of 2 years.
House arrest.
Yeah, I bought a treadmill, and a lot of people know me because I was the walking guy, right? Every single meeting on Zoom, I was walking. That kept my brain sane, and I didn't know I was supplying an ADHD need, because I could not sit down for more than 2 hours my whole life.
Right. Yeah,
when I was a kid, my poor grandpa, I was living with my grandfather because my mom died when I was 2 years old. By the way, that was one of the reasons my doctor said that I got my ADHD increased. This abandonment, right? The trauma of abandonment. So all my friends knew how to learn properly within the year that you're supposed to. It took me 2 years to learn how to learn. And it was my poor grandpa coming from 7 p.m. until 11 p.m. for 2 years, trying to get the words in me. So you know what I was doing? I was so out of the attention, I was so afraid that I would actually memorize the words, but not have the logic to put them together. And my grandpa would catch me until finally it clicked. But it was a horrible time, very traumatic. And then I felt different because I was the only kid in the whole class that couldn't read.
And whose measuring stick? They're using someone else's measuring stick for your ability.
And this condition wasn't discovered, really acknowledged until later, right? Like I'm talking 1970s here, right? 1980s.
They actually call it some brain, it's like a brain injury.
Right? So when my psychoanalyst told me the reasons why we get this condition, he says, number one is hereditary. So he said, we're going to analyze your dad. My dad passed away 8 years ago, but he started asking me questions about my dad. And after, a couple of sessions, he said, your dad was big time ADHD too. He was also a narcissist and he also had the victim mentality. But he never knew. He went to the grave without knowing. And he had several businesses throughout his life too, by the way.
But again, that's the environment. You were raised in that environment. So you were raised as a victim mindset, right? It really comes down to the environment. If you don't mind, I want to go back down to something. When we talked ADHD, I think you have ADHD, you said that it scared you. Mm-hmm. And this is the one thing I'm really communicating to people is it's not a life sentence. It's actually good news because it's clarity. But when you had that initial fear, what was that? Why did you have that? Oh my God, I have ADHD.
Because I think unconsciously, I didn't want to admit that I was sick. And it was
sick. We'll go back to that.
Right? I didn't want to admit that I was sick. By the way, I don't think it's a sickness, right? But I was like, back then it's like, maybe I'm crazy. And I didn't want to admit that I was a crazy person.
Yeah.
Because everything is starting to make sense, right? Everything, if you put the symptoms of this condition and you start putting in boxes all your traumas and all your events and all your successes, it's almost like having a life review and you realize this makes sense.
4 letters. This questions a lot of your life.
All right. What have I done, right? So what have I done is, and that was last year. I was, 51 years old already, and messing up like a 19-year-old kid. And the walking on, I was so proud because I was walking 20K a day because I couldn't travel. So I was walking, and I thought, oh, it's my health, and I'm the best guy. Narcissism comes in, and I will train, and I will try to get people to do the same. Of course, having a walking desk is healthy in a moderate way. One of the things, what happened to me? Throughout my travels last year, I had to go to the doctor because I felt a pain, and I turned yellow. Turns out that I was extreme anemic because I was extreme on everything. So I started doing intermittent fasting. So I was eating 1 time a day, and I was walking 20 kilometers a day.
Oh yeah, too much energy.
And I did that for 2 years.
Yeah.
My body was a mess inside. I was dying. My doctor said, you know what he said? He actually put me on IV, on iron for the next 3 days to recover my red blood cells because he says, I don't know how you're walking.
Yeah. So there's still a lot of negative stigma with ADHD, especially with mental health, especially with men. But my point was to say, your initial reaction was because how people still view ADHD or mental health challenges, and that's why I decided to start talking openly about it. And the more I talked about it, you were around, you started asking, people are starting to talk about it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just our brain's wired differently. Yeah. Period. That's it. Simple. I can't change it. I can't mix it. There's no way I can see the future any better than I can now. It doesn't matter if I read books or whatnot. I even got dyscalculia. I'm a structural engineer who can't do math in his head, right? Numbers mess me up. I need a calculator. But I figured out ways to overcome that and challenge. But I don't do a lot of math anymore. I'm really good at compliance. So now that I understand my abilities, because I figured out a way to overcome or find a new way in doing things. So, you know, if you've got depression, you got anxiety, you've got whatever, there's nothing wrong with it. We just need to talk about it, and then we get clarity on what happened. It's not an excuse what we did in the past. It's simply an explanation.
To fix your future.
To fix the future, and don't dwell on the past.
Yeah, which I've done.
Even the people that it was around you, if they don't accept that and they still want to harbor the past, you got to do something different. But we got to move on. As long as you got that awareness and move forward, and especially when I went too, when she read the same book. She took a non-ADHD support group for spouses. They're like, oh yeah, now we're getting it. Because a lot of stuff we do doesn't fit the social norm. You're supposed to show up, give hugs to everyone, blah, blah, blah. Like there's these bunch of rules that are made up by, I don't know, people who have been dead 300 years. Or whoever decides to write a book to say to be a better person, you should be doing this stuff. But a lot of times I get home, my emotional dysregulation bucket or my emotional regulation bucket's full. One more thing will make me blow. Or my executive function, my brain was done. Why? I don't want to make a decision about dinner. I don't care what we eat. But people take offense to that. But now that we understand all this stuff, when we get home, I actually, if I say I need 5 minutes, I need 10 minutes, now it was, okay, fine. I just need that time to recoup, just this transition. It's a new vocabulary.
Yeah.
And it's just all about communicating, right? I don't know if you notice, I'm doing this. I'm sorry, I can't sit still. I'm no longer ashamed of it. I'm no longer I'm not going to sit there, because if I sit here too stiff, I'm in a meeting, this impulsivity starts getting bad.
Yeah.
I start saying silly things. Yeah. People get offended. Yeah. So let me rock back and forth so I can focus better, actually. A lot of fidgeting helps me focus and pay attention or control my outbursts.
Which is another interesting factor, and I hope people will actually take a lot of advantage of this podcast, because we could say we're saving lives by doing this.
Yeah.
Right now, you see me fine from my waist up, but my leg is moving up and down all the time. And before we did the podcast, I put music on, but you guys don't hear it because I have a canceling mic, but the music is always on. Before I used to do it because I thought I liked music and because I thought I liked moving. Now I know that in my brain needs that to function. We cannot sit still. But now, because I know what my brain needs, I do it in a way that doesn't affect other people, if that makes sense, right?
And remember, if you met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with that ADHD. It's on the spectrum.
Yeah.
We got various symptoms, various aspects, like my model, executive functioning dysfunction, time blindness, and inhibition. It's all varying degrees. You know, I think we got about the same hyperactivity. We can sit still, but some people would be a little less. Impulsivity is really rampant for me. That's the major thing that I got to work on, but the other ones are not so bad. So it's on a spectrum, and it just varies on the person, and we're figuring it out. But I'm no longer apologetic for some of my unique traits. And yes, if I get impulsively verbal and rude, that's not an exception. Like, that's not an excuse. That's being rude. It doesn't matter. But I remember once I was sitting in a big technical committee meeting, a room full of arrogant engineers. I really had to work hard and keep quiet. But I actually got up and started walking around the back. And I was told to sit down because I'm distracted. And I said, well, I can't. I need to stand up, stretch my arms and legs. And if I sit down, you're going to be pissed off at me, because last time you told me I was talking too much. So if I can get up and move, I can listen more. It's my hyperactivity. So communicating that now, people say, okay, that's fine. Because I wasn't distracting people. It was just, I was not the norm to stand up and walk around. And guess what happened in the next meeting? There's 5 other people doing the same thing, because one guy had really bad knees, the other guy had a really bad back. Now I give permission to everyone to stretch, as long as we're not disrupting the class, right? Like, sometimes it just takes one of us to just challenge the norm, but I was able to communicate the why, and then now, no, get permission.
One of the things that is also a blessing for our audience that may think have the conditions that we just described is to go get diagnosed with a good psychoanalyst. But make sure you find somebody that has experience with ADHD, because not every psychologist has that. But it's good. Why? Because then you can work around your family and they will create more empathy. Mm-hmm. My family now has more empathy. Before, I was annoying to them. For example, my kids didn't want to have a relationship with me because I was very annoying.
Narcissist,
annoying narcissist, the victim. For example, I will not stop talking. I had to be the one, like you, that had to have control of the conversation. So I will never let them express. Of course, they will feel left out. So the result is they will just quietly stop visiting me, or they will say, "No, thanks, Dad. I don't want to have dinner with you today." You see? But now they know my condition. My wife too. She knows my condition. I know my condition. So I'm constantly watching. Okay, am I talking too much? Okay, let them talk first, right?
Right. And they're communicating you differently, that maybe you're talking too much, rather than shut up and stop talking.
And in a beautiful way, right? So, hey, Dad, can you please say something? Yeah. And they do it in a nice way because their empathy is there. They know that I work different than they work. And by the way, being the one who I am is why, excuse my language, but I'm the boss, right? I run multiple companies, and because of my over talking, I also express the ideas that the Lord gave me, and those ideas most of the time tend to be incredible. So it's not about suppressing your God-given ability through ADHD. It's about managing in a way that doesn't harm other people, especially your family, right? Isn't that amazing? Like, for example, another thing that I need to show, because people get offended a lot when they don't know me. And one of the reasons why we separated was because of this. My wife will start talking to me about something that I didn't care. So I will look at her eyes and I will listen to her, but my brain was in 1,000 other things. Now, when I say I didn't care, it doesn't mean I didn't really care. I care about everything she says, but it wasn't on my interest.
Yeah.
So then I will grab 40% of the conversation, and to fill the gap, I will ask her a question about the conversation, and then she will get so mad because she will tell me, "I just told you that, and that's what I was talking about. Were you listening to me?" But I was faking so well my expression that she thought I was listening, but my brain was all over the place. That's another ADHD trait. So you need to be very careful when you speak with people. You need to tell them if they don't know you. By the way, I have ADHD. Please, if I repeat myself, if I ask a question, don't get mad. It just takes me longer to process the information. That's all, right?
And for people who's watched the video, I was smiling. I was kind of giggling. That was not to laugh at him, because I understand exactly what's going on. So it's more like, yeah, I know where he's going with this. You don't have to tell me. And that's where a lot of the things I get together with ADHD people is we don't have to explain our symptoms or our mess, and we just get it. And we'll do this stuff. Oh, yeah. I understand that. One thing I want to touch on, you said about getting mental health help to get diagnosed. There's other things too, is a lot of like depression, anxiety, borderline personality, bipolar condition. They have a lot of similar symptoms as ADHD. So you also got to entertain, so then your professional that you're looking for has to look at everything. Because if you actually like work on depression or anxiety and you get that under control and the symptoms leave, it's not ADHD. It was that mental health condition. Now, if you work on it, I mean, it could be, there's a lot of coexisting conditions with ADHD because of actually, I think, our environment, the way we were raised, and in the world that we're in. If you work on a depression or anxiety or other condition and that is under control, but you still have the symptoms, then most likely it's ADHD, because ADHD, it's chronic. It's not whenever conditional, sometimes here, sometimes there. It's always there.
Always on.
So even if we got our right systems, the way we got, we're setting everything up properly, got the right environment, it's still a challenge to start working on stuff we don't have an interest in. So like you're saying, people perceive us as we don't care, but reality is we just lost interest, and this thing just does not stop. It never stops. I never get a break. And I'm running 200 different things at once, all the time. So if you're going to lose me on the conversation, I'm going to start thinking about other things. And the other thing too is, why are we always the one that's rude? Because we lost interest in the conversation when the conversation's not interesting. Like, to me, it's a two-way street. So that's where some of the challenges, but with the vocabulary that you've learned, that I've learned, and that we're sharing with people, it does make a better thing.
Yeah.
Like, but it's a two-way street. I don't want people to, oh, I screwed up. The past is the past. I'm very sorry. So I'm going to now understand. I'm going to just do everything I can for you to make you peace. No, it's a compromise. You got to meet halfway.
You cannot do that because otherwise you will have no life.
You're going to create a new character to play again, and you're not going to be happy because you're not allowed to be yourself.
It's reaching a balance.
Correct. Right?
Because
I'm not a non-ADHD wife. I got to be aware and be present more. And she's got to also understand that if I'm losing interest, she's starting to see signs when I lose interest. So either she changes her conversation and goes, okay, maybe we'll continue this another time.
Oh, and by the way, I haven't seen the statistics on this, but I guarantee more than 90% of ADHD people marry normal people. Because if you have two ADHD people living together, I think it will be hell on earth.
Oh, two most ADHD, yeah, it would be.
Right?
That's a very, there's some, but yeah, I think, well, for me, what happened was I fell in love with my wife because there was no drama. She was a calming force. I didn't realize that I needed that to settle me down.
My wife is the same. My wife has no drama.
Right.
No drama.
And like,
She
why
couldn't
did
care
you get
less about
pissed
me.
off? That person just did this. Oh, just, whatever. I'm like, but if it wasn't for that, I think I'd be probably jail right now. Like,
in my case, like my wife is super calm, but she also never allows herself to get taken advantage of. But in a nice, beautiful way, and that's where it helps me, right? Because she will always make sure right is right and wrong is wrong, and that brings peace to me. And I didn't know it was the compliment that I needed to run my life, because she's a completely normal, beautiful, very normal person, right?
yes, two extremes.
But at the same time, right, if you look at both of our lives, she's always saying, I cannot get myself to do what I want to do. And in my case, is I cannot stop myself to do more things that I want to do. So once we get the balances, I help her get the emotional ability to accomplish her goals. And she now calms me down from overdoing stuff. So now we have a beautiful life balance.
But there's a good point that you just said. To do more, to achieve more, it's a need. We need to keep doing things. We can't stop. And that was a big problem for me. I was being told to stop, to slow down, and then I would fight that. And the thing is, we're both high achievers. Doesn't matter what the goal we achieve. Once the goal is achieved, it's done. It was the journey that we enjoyed, not necessarily the goal.
What's
We
next?
set more. What's the next one? Or you're greedy because you want more money. Well, it's a good measuring tool, but it's the goal setting that we're after. And the high achieving ADHD brain is extremely intense. People around are like, whoa, geez, your force of nature, settle down. It's like, I tried to tamper that down. I don't know if you've got this experience, but people are trying to tamper it, slow down, tamper it down. And when I did, things didn't go well.
Because it's just bubbling up. The energy bubbles up on you. So it's now that I know, I channel my energy in positive things, right?
Right.
For example, the podcasting, right? I fell in love with podcasting 3 years ago. Now I used to have one podcast. Now I have 3 podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a beautiful way to channel my energy into blessing the world. And because of the financial situation that God allowed me to have, I have the time to do that now. And funny enough, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because this podcast is also helping my business get more knowledge. More branding, more exposure. That's why my business is growing too. But I'm also blessing other people by interviewing brilliant minds like yours. So it's all positive. And by the way, we're recording in my office, in my house. I don't even have to travel to an office because I know my condition and it's under control. So I'm not doing business travel for 1 year at least. And I spend most of my days in my house. But what do? I go for a long walk, but I go with my wife. See? So It's the same kind of thing that I used to do before, but now it's done in a way that is blessing my family, not cursing my family, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you're aware. We're aware
Yeah.
of the challenges that are created, but at the same time, the world not wanting to understand the differences. And I'm all about this with tactical breakthroughs. It's all about communicating that it's okay to be different, to pursue your dreams. So you're pursuing the way, you have the right to do things your way that works well. Like, I used to get in trouble all the time for doing things like either at my first jobs, I still got the end result. Even in school, I got a good grade. I still did what the boss asked, but how I did it was what I got in trouble for, right? How can you do it that way? Well, I did what you asked for. You got the end result. Yeah, but that's not the point. You're still in trouble for doing things different. And I think that's the wrong thing. Who cares how people get to it? As long as we get to it, should be the issue.
And that's why we become good entrepreneurs, because once you're in the marketplace, in fact, the most efficient way to get what your client wants is what gets your client happier, and therefore you're going to get more revenue out of it. So the whole school system is funny because I'm a computer scientist. I have 2 computer science degrees. And you have to be a super person in math. And like you, I could never do math. So I would barely pass by, to the point that universities almost had to make an exception to let me into the computer science program because I had to have some level of math, but I was persistent. So I would pass by with the minimum mark, but I will make it. So I would actually make the mark. But then when you're seeing programming languages, I was the best in the class.
I get it, right? Actually, some things I looked into I found my university transcripts, and it was like polarized. Mark was just passing or very high. I'm like, those are the courses I really enjoyed. These are those I did not care about. Right? And it's again, the time frame for ADHD brain is now or not now, and it's all in or not.
Yeah.
There's no in between. There's no moderation.
By the way, that's the secret of success. Yeah. You have to be all in, right? So that's why I also call it a superpower. I cannot, if you want to kill my mood, allow me to do something halfway and don't let me finish it. It will kill my day.
It'll distract me for months.
I'm talking about this time frame. So my dad was incredible. He taught me how to set goals, how to set long-term, medium-term, and short-term goals. And big part of why I'm successful is because I learned that when I was in primary school. Without him knowing that I was ADHD and he was ADHD, he told me one beautiful secret. He says, set your long-term goal and your medium-term goal, and then forget about it. And just focus on your short-term goals. And before you know, he's gonna get there. And that's how I live my life. And now I'm like, of course, because I cannot live in the future, right? And when I start living, when I started living in the future because of fear of past traumas, or for example, I grew in poverty. So for me was, what if I'm not gonna make payroll? What if I'm going to lose my house? What if? So I actually tripled my throughput in the business, and I was overcompensating because my set was in the near future. I probably had 5 years to fix, but I thought I had 2 weeks to fix. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Yeah. So once I learned that too, also I said, okay, I have time to do this, but I don't have to finish it right now. So what I do is I still focus on my short-term tasks, and the long-term tasks that require multiple days to do, I write them in a whiteboard, and they stay there. As long as they stay there, I know I can remember them, because that's another thing that you mentioned, right?
Oh yeah, well, everything memory is crap. Right? I can't remember more than 2 things.
So this is the way I flesh it out. I run a high-end software company, and first I became a Scrum Master, which means a project manager for software. And I got like multiple levels into Scrum Master because I knew really how to divide and conquer because of my condition. But don't ask me to type in the tasks in the software. That was the most horrible thing for me. I actually wrote the first version of the software. I wrote it myself 20 years ago to manage and organize tasks, but I actually never used it. And so now what I do is I have a whiteboard, and in the morning I check what I have to do. I check what is in progress, and then I add the stuff that I want to do, and then I just whiteboard it. And then because it's just a whiteboard, it's not a software. I just take a picture of it and then I have it on my phone. It's simple things like that that keeps my brain sane. Right?
Well, what you just described there is actually gives your brain room, because working memory is all about what you can remember in the short term. Most people, it's 7 to 8 things. Well, I know for me it's 2. So you tell me the third thing, the first one's gone. It's not that I wasn't listening. It's just not there. That's just the way my brain's going.
And it gives you anxiety because you knew you had a third thing and you don't remember that. So I was in anxiety all the time.
So I'm an idiot. I can't remember stuff. You're supposed to remember a bunch of stuff. So that was like what you're saying. I was always afraid of losing goals or not remembering something or a great idea I want to work on. But also with time blindness, I can't see things or my long-term goals. I can't keep it in my head. And with ADHD, if it's not visible, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's, you might as well burn it, because if it's in a filing cabinet, you can't see it, it's gone. So what Dave was explaining was, you made it visible, and that's what I've done. I got a lot of whiteboards in my office too. I got my quarter goals there. I got my long-term. I got my active projects listed there. So when I walk in, I always see it. Now I don't have to worry about losing track of that. It's there as a constant reminder.
Yeah.
That's making stuff visible in compensation for our brain differences. I'm not going to say that it's a challenge. I don't think it's a challenge. I got a poor working memory. Because of my poor working memory, I don't remember what you just said, so I can bring the conversation here. Oh, I think we're all here for a reason. Every animal, every plant, everything has its own purpose, and in life and on this planet. So why isn't my brain wired the way it is, or set up my unique ability the way I do things? Why can't it be part of what's special about this world? And we're all different. So you got the ability to sit down and work 40 hours a week and go home and not care? We need people like that. I can't do it. But our ability as entrepreneurs to go try different things. Oh, we don't like that. I really hate inefficiency, so I'll find a shortcut.
Innovate. That's why we're good for innovating. Yeah.
So once I got understanding of what my unique ability was, the value I bring to the world. Now to the wrong people, there's no value. So you're not my people. I find the people. That's why we talk regularly. That's why I'm friends with David, with the like-minded people. But even non-entrepreneurs that respect and value other people's differences and points of view, that's the people I hang out with. That's the people I try to I've gotten rid of a lot of customers because they didn't value how we did things.
Yeah.
So I work with customers. I love an engineer doesn't follow, I like this joke. Why did the engineer cross the road there? Because that's what they did last year. Right? So they like that I don't do the same thing all the time, because I adapt to the different project parameters, while most engineers will follow the same path every time.
One of the things that was very hard for me is reading books. So I told you guys that it took me 2 years to learn how to read. That created a trauma in my brain, and the worst thing for me was reading in public.
Yeah. More trauma.
I will get stuttered, right? So I avoided that, but I also avoided reading books. The only books that I devoured were the computer science books or any technology-related books that I was attracted to. I will devour them in days, like
They're interesting, challenging, and novel.
But when I started to like business, and I realized that I needed to read more books, business books. Those business books, right? Like, it's 300 pages and you get 2 golden nuggets out of it. But those 2 golden nuggets could change your business, but you had to go through the fluff. So Audible came up, and this is what I do as another advice. So now what I do is I don't leave the booking on Audible. I put it on and I go for a walk. The walking gives me enough brain activity and physical activity distraction, so I can pay attention to what I'm listening to. And I've read hundreds of books like that. And actually, the golden nugget. So you know what I do after I read the book? If the book is worth it, I buy the paperback, and then I go to the page where the golden nugget is, and I highlight it, and then I put it on my whiteboard if I want to implement. See,
that's how.
Sometimes.
For me, that's also the process of making sure it goes in my long-term memory.
Right.
There's a reason. That's how I learn. It was I read, highlight, rewrite.
Yeah.
Then I could remember, because actually I learned to understand. I don't learn to know, because knowing means you're memorizing, and I can never memorize.
Right.
You can never memorize.
No.
But that's what pissed off a lot of people in my class is I was the goofy one. I didn't do all the work and I got okay marks, but they always came to me to solve the difficult problems because I understood the theory. And I do not. But I was ridiculed for not having maths and not doing work.
And then,
But
and when a professor
solved
is
the problems and I taught them. That's the way I learned too.
you became a professional engineer.
Yeah. I sealed drawings for buildings. But it's just, we all got our own ways of learning things and seeing things. And just the final thing, what David was explaining is it was the whole fidgeting thing. If I can, like for me driving, that's the only time I can actually do some good thinking on 2 or 3 things versus 200, because my driving is keeping 20% of my brain activated on driving. Therefore, my brain's able to focus on just a few things. That's the fidgeting part as well. So we got to come up with these tricks. You know, that's why I listen to podcasts. I'm working out. I'm working hard on the treadmill or whatever, but I can actually pick up on stuff. But if I'm just doing nothing, my head's all over the place.
Yeah. Hyperactivity. So for you guys that may think that you have ADHD, hyperactivity is also a blessing if you manage it properly. This is what we're talking about. You're always going to be hyperactive. Don't even fight it. Use it to your advantage. That's why we look okay, because if we don't exercise while learning, we don't get to learn. We have to keep moving. We have to do something, right? And
You said it right. You're channeling the hyperactivity in a positive way.
Right.
And I just want to clarify, so there's hyperactive, physically hyperactive ADHD, and then what they refer to as inattentive ADHD. They don't have the physical hyperactivity, but it's kind of like they kind of refine it as hyperactivity in the mind, but which we do have.
We have that too.
They don't need to move as much. So they still have some restlessness, physical restlessness, but we need to be physically moving. That's the big difference. So, you know, it's like Dan Sullivan say, it was André, you need to move to get things done. Well, I can just sit here and do things impulsively. And that's kind of like a good way. It's like, inattentive, you can actually sit down for long periods of time, while the hyperactive person, that's why I got a stand-up desk. I feel like standing, up I go, do work, my back starting to go down, or I do more walks. And like now I do have to go to the gym every day because I've got to burn off this physical energy, especially if I'm in the office all day. So positive channeling, understanding how your body works, your time for it. There's just so much. Understand yourself. Stop listening to people. There's no best ways. I can only do 5 hours sleep. Any more than that, I don't do well in the day. It works for me.
See? And for the opposite, for me, if I don't do 8 hours, my day is ruined.
Right.
It's different. But another thing that happened to me, and it's because of my condition, I have been always a night person.
Yeah.
Which means
the chronotype.
I cannot focus from 7 a.m. until like 9:30 a.m. My focus is 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, when we're recording, it's like quarter after 6 p.m. It's dark outside already because it's almost winter. I feel more alive. I feel bright. You know, when I was so I was a programmer for over 25 years when I was coding professionally. They made me go to an office from 8 to 5. And what will happen is that I will come home after 5, log onto my computer and write the best code from 5 until midnight. And my bosses, I had to convince my bosses that I could not function at 8 a.m. So what they did is they put all the meetings early in the morning because they knew I couldn't function because I didn't know I had ADHD. I told them I'm a night person. But because I love coding, I could do 100% focus on that. When I became a leader in organizations before I had my own business, I would bring my best programmer with me that didn't have ADHD, so I could actually pay attention to the people because they were telling me what they needed and my brain was running the code. So I wasn't paying attention to the next thing that they were saying. That's why I brought my coder with me, right?
So we've always been figuring stuff out unknowingly, subconsciously to overcome the challenges or the impairments of ADHD. And now we understand why they're there. And that's why I'm sharing the strategies and routines I created and I figured out. And that's what I'm sharing with other high achieving ADHD entrepreneurs. It's a brain thing. Why fight it? Understand your brain? Now we know what to do. Control the environment. Come up with routines. I have a lot of routines. I don't like structure. I don't like systems that restrict me, but I get up in the morning, I do the same thing. My clothes are picked out the night before. Why? So I don't have to make that decision. It's all there. I go in, brush my teeth, put my clothes on, go downstairs, take my morning pill. Everything I need for the next day is on the hutch that I put in the day before. My bag's there. So I go out. I haven't thought about anything. I haven't burned any mental energy. So when I go to the office, I can work, right? And I got routines at work that just doesn't require brain power. That's so I can conserve my mental energy, my executive functioning energy, which I don't have a lot of. But if someone puts a piece of paper on top of my hat on the hutch, my day's ruined because it's not part of the routine. I can't see it. I know I get freaks out. I'm like, oh my God, where's my hat? And all I gotta do is move the paper.
I know.
But it's still not the point. My wife finally understood why I needed these things. Because now my whole day was derailed. Then I already became a tyrant at work. But now I know what I know. It's like, okay, now I'm actually going to go take a walk so I can reset. So that's a lot of stuff that we're doing for specific reasons. Or my favorite is, my wife used to get upset with me, even some of my staff. Like, I'd leave the morning and I'd say goodbye, even though she said it. I never heard it. People walk in and say hi to me, but I ignore them in the office. It's not that, I did 2 shorts about it too, because it's not that when I didn't hear you, it's not that I don't care or love you, it's my head's already at work.
Yeah, and you're focused on something that's interesting.
I'm focusing on that, I'm already there. So that's why I didn't hear it. I'm already on the road. And at the office, it's like, I did a short saying, guys, I'm not trying to be rude or ignorant to you, I'm in a hyper-focus mode. And I know if I get out of it, it's going to be another 20, 40 minutes before I can get back in. So I'm not going to fall to that distraction. I'm going to ignore everything else so I can get my stuff done. Then I go over and say hi. So having those kind of communications and the vocabulary, people are like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
So when my wife says, okay, bye, good, love you, I just walk out. She knows my head's already at work.
Yeah.
And the guys come in, they know I'm in hyper-focus, therefore they keep their distance.
And it goes in different levels, right?
Right.
And it's funny because even my business is prospering again after these 2 years of fighting and adapting and making new systems in my life. I used to be the tyrant in my office too. Like, I would be mad if people wouldn't do things my own way.
Yeah.
And then when people would tell me, you're so inflexible, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I can't. Now I know why. So now they're more flexible with me, but I'm also more flexible with them. For example, something as little as don't interrupt me if you see that I have a meeting in my calendar. Because anybody can get a 2-minute interruption and it will be fine. For me, it will take me 40 minutes to get back on track on what I was talking about, right? I want to switch gears now, Andre, and talk about addiction and ADHD, because I think it's a huge topic that if you don't manage that, you could ruin your life.
Yeah, I actually had an interesting, Dr. Parhar from British Columbia was on my podcast talking about substance use disorder. And how, it coexists a lot with ADHD. And I think it has to do with a lot with the environment we're raised in. But addiction has a lot to do with what pain are you hiding? It's not that I enjoy drinking. It's not that I like drugs. It's more the fact that we're hiding something or running away from something. And when I realize, so there's a lot of high functioning alcoholics out there. We're not drop dead drunks. We don't, make fools of ourselves. But when you're like, for me, I couldn't wait to get home and have that drink. It wasn't to celebrate or anything. It was just, I was begging. I couldn't wait.
That was me for 30 years.
Right. So now, why? You got to question why. Like Gabor Mate in his book, Myth to Normal, you see, we're asking the wrong questions when someone comes in with a substance use disorder. It's not what substance are you on, it's what pain are you hiding.
Yeah.
So a lot of the, being told you're doing everything wrong for a long time, you're not fitting the mold, you create a new character so you can fit in, you don't like yourself. And you got that person inside you who's trying to protect you all the time from a lot of childhood stuff, teenage stuff, or whatever trauma's coming on. And you're tired of feeling pain all the time, so we're going to go to something else that's going to make us feel better. Or in my case, which turned out to be, was to forget. I actually got to the point I was drinking now to get drunk hard. And that was the first time. So a lot of times, substance use shows up more about masking or self-medicating our symptoms. Like for me in university, I drank a lot. French Canadian, I could pound out a lot. But it was actually me. We're going out. I would dance all night. I was like bursting out my pent up hyperactivity. So that was a way for me to just lash out and burn off that mental, physical energy. But I couldn't do that sober because you look like an idiot. But if you were drunk, that was okay, right? Some people take cocaine so they can slow their brain down so they can fall asleep. So the self-medicating part, I think that's where it starts, but with more pain and trauma and untreated trauma. I did a lot of work on that the last few years. Now that's why I say I call myself an alcoholic, because I know if I have that one drink, I'm gonna be back to a bottle. And because now it's your body remembers, it remembers how to do things. Just when I quit smoking, I still get dreams, vivid dreams that I had a cigarette. And I wake up, I have to smell my fingers. But I know if I have one drag, I'm back to a pack a day and it's going to be a whole new battle.
But you've been clean for so long now because now you know why you were doing it and you dealt with the trauma, you dealt with the pain.
Yeah.
Because all drug addiction is a way to self-medicate the pain in your heart. Yeah. It's a trauma thing that you have to deal with. That's where my faith comes back in again, right? You know, for me, it was a lot faster and easier because as a born-again Christian, I could go to the Lord and I can ask the Holy Spirit, please, Lord, help me heal this. And it was instant. I was like you. I had to have a drink. And the problem was that when I felt bad, it wasn't one drink. It was the whole bottle.
So, yeah.
I'm talking about wine, right? Like I started doing hardcore liquor.
Well, for me, it was hard. I do a bottle a day sometimes, depending on the day.
Yeah, for me, it was mostly wine. But this is what I would do. I would say, I read in a magazine, because my wife always didn't like that me drinking because it's not good, especially every day. But I will tell her. I just read in a magazine that this new study said that 1 cup of red wine a day is better for your heart. That's the excuse, right? And she's like, oh, good, okay, let's have it. I will open a whole bottle of wine.
Wine starts.
I will give her one to her, one to me. I will finish mine, and then I will take another one for me, and then we will talk for an hour with her. The dinner was over, there was no more wine, and then her cup had one sip on, and then said, and I will say, can I finish yours? And she's like, no problem.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't get drunk.
No.
And that's the problem, because when your resistance level is so high, you are becoming an alcoholic.
That's what the discussion with Dr. Parr is, the high functioning alcoholic or substance use person. And the other thing, like, here's another ADHD thing that just went away, it'll come back. That was the other thing. We have a problem. ADHD brain is either all in or all out. It's very hard to moderate, right? So 1 glass, you got a bottle there. We're going to finish the bottle. So I'm not saying it's an excuse that we can't stop. It's just that sometimes when we get, if we're getting in that emotional state, it's all or nothing. So that's why I decide I'm never going to touch alcohol again, because if I have 1 sip, I'm going to go back all in. And the thing is, I believe that the times when I was self-medicating for my symptoms, I can stop and start whenever. I used to stop drinking for 4 or 5 months and go back and be no problem. I actually tried this month break because that's what I used to do. But then I didn't realize I was counting the days till I can have that first drink, 27, 25, 24. And then when I got to that day I can go, I went all out, and I was in a different city. And it scared me. I thought someone slipped me something. I got into state. I don't remember getting back to my hotel and realized I was counting down the days. And I wanted to get really drunk that night because I was feeling pain from something that happened 2 months ago. I was numbing myself. And that's when I realized that's a real problem and I got to work it. And I give a lot of courage, respect, and it takes a lot of courage to decide if you want to get some mental health help. And it's not easy. It's hard work. And I think that's what a lot of people are afraid to do. It's hard work if you want to make it happen. The stuff I went through was not fun, but it was necessary. And it'll take years.
But the end result, though, is a beautiful life. You're living a beautiful life. You're still married to the same wife. You still have beautiful kids. You know, the Lord restored my marriage. I don't deserve it, but He put a lot of compassion and forgiveness in my wife's heart, and I'm restored. I never had a better relationship with anybody, especially my wife, that I've been having in this last year. And it's because I put in the time. What my faith did is accelerate that. So, to give an example, I didn't stop drinking alcohol just like that. When my psychoanalyst told me ADHD, one of the situations in your brain, it's not all of them, there's many situations, but some of the pitfalls of your brain with you have ADHD is that you cannot control dopamine.
Yeah.
So your brain is not able to control the highs and the lows. So when you get something, it will kick you high. If you don't keep doing it, you will crash with everything. You know, let's go back to the music, right? I have listened to music all my life as a background music. It cannot be talking. It has to be just instrumental music. I thought it because I loved it. And when I went to a restaurant and I didn't have it, I would get mad because I don't have music. Then my doctor told me, you do that because when you have instrumental music in the background, it's giving you dopamine and it's sustaining it.
Yeah.
That's why you were walking on the treadmill in slow pace. It was giving you sustained dopamine so you didn't crash. It was an automatic mechanism of your brain to give you what you needed to control your condition. And that's why we tend to get addicted to different things, because if it's not music, if it's not walking, I mean, even walking was killing me because I was overdoing it. But if it's alcohol, if it's pornography, if it's drugs, any kind of drug, then you're messing up with your wife, you're messing up with your kids, you're ruining your life.
The consequences are negative.
You could end up in jail, right? So this was my transition, right? So I got back to my wife in a miraculous way. The day that she said, I want a divorce because I cannot handle this, was the last day that we were separated. That day, my psychoanalyst told me, David, what you're doing in your marriage and in your life is the 3 horsemen of the relationship apocalypse. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then he said, and he will talk to me in Bible ideas, because I came back to my faith and he happened to be Christian too. So he says, these are the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse with your relationship with your wife. Number 1, you defend yourself. Number 2, you run away from the situation. Number 3, you blame her for everything. You defend, you run away, and you blame. If you do that all the time, she cannot express her feelings and you can never fix the situation because you're always avoiding your responsibility, your part in the situation. When he said that, I was like, what? And going back to my faith, she told me she wanted a divorce at noon on the phone. I had my psychoanalyst. That was another miracle, by the way. For some reason, he told me, David, I need to see you more often. People, like doctors, don't do that. They want to see you once a week, once every 2 weeks. He said, I know you have money, and I don't care about the money. Even if you don't pay me, I have to see you as many times as possible. And because, I was separated, I took it on him. So I was there from like 9 a.m. until like 11 a.m. on a long session. Like they were long sessions with him. Beautiful person. That day she said, I want a divorce. My life fell. I felt like I went to hell. So what did I do? My ADHD brain started hyperactivity. I went to the gym and I worked out for 4 hours. And then, I went to the sauna at the gym and I started praying. And I was asking God, okay, Lord, what do I do? And the Lord was saying, just be still and know that I am God. Be still and I am God. Everything is going to be okay. I will never leave you nor forsake you. The entire world, you cannot be abandoned by everybody, but you will always have me. Mm-hmm. So I came out relaxed, empowered, no alcohol, no drugs, no pornography, no nothing. Walk into my car at 10 p.m. after being in the gym for so long. I get a phone call from my wife and she says, sorry to bother you, but I'm trying to get into the house and all the lights in the house are on and I left them off and I think there is somebody inside the house. And there was she was freaked out. So I knew immediately it was a chance for God to show myself as a caring person to her. So I said, I'll be right there. I put the phone on mute and I just ran with my car to the house. And sure enough, 2 minutes before I got to the house, she would start calling again and I didn't answer the phone. Because I knew she found out that everything was okay in my heart.
Yeah.
But I came in, she was still outside, and she said, I think it was my daughter, but okay, check in and make sure everything is safe. So here I am, and I make the whole house, check the whole house, and said, no, everything is fine. And then she said, yeah, my daughter told me that she went into the house and she didn't let us know that she came into the house and she left everything on. But then she said, would you like a coffee? This is the same day that she asked me for a divorce. And I said, yeah, no problem. And then I started telling her about my session with my psychoanalyst, how the three horsemen of the apocalypse and all that. And she almost started crying because it was the first time in our entire life, after 30 years of being married, that she felt understood. Yeah. So we kept talking, and then, I got there at midnight. She got up to the kitchen to do something, and something came on me, and I ran to the bedroom, and I went into the bed, and I wasn't living there. And then she kept calling me and looking for me, and then she went upstairs and she went into the bedroom and she saw me laying there with my pajamas on and everything, and she started laughing. She said, what are you doing? I'm like, can I stay for one night? And she said, okay, I'll let you stay for one night. And she started laughing. And I'll stay. And the next day, she let me stay and we started talking about our issues. And I kept going to my psychoanalyst. I never left. That was a miracle.
Is it a miracle, or did you finally come to the realization and open yourself up and be open to an alternative and see yourself in a different light that was challenging, and you wanted to work to improve yourself for the betterment of everyone?
Yeah.
That takes a lot of courage and a lot of confidence to do, to say, you suck at this, Andre, this is horrible, and to admit it and to see it. That's what a lot of the work is. And there's a lot of a negative stigmatism about mental health and getting help. My dad hated people who went about professional mental health. He thought they were weak and idiots. But I find that people actually go get the help. They have the courage. It's hard work, but like you said earlier, man, is it free, right? I hated myself. Now I'm starting to like myself. And that's a complete, it might not sound like a big gorge, but it is a massive canyon that I just jumped from going from hating myself to being okay, right? And, I'd like to give you a lot of congratulations, and for you to be open like that to yourself and to see that and to work on it, because it wasn't easy. And
no, it wasn't, but the door was open and I took advantage of the opportunity. And I learned the three horsemen of the apocalypse because I started applying that, and that's painful because you have to kill your ego when you do that. And because my wife had so many emotional wounds that I put on her, she needed to express her pain. I am from Guatemala, so what we actually did is we went in January to Guatemala. That's where we're from, but we live in Canada for over 30 years now. So we went there, we rented an Airbnb because we were just investing in a property there. And I thought I was going to be there 2 weeks. Turns out that my sister-in-law had a friend that went to a church, and they invited us to this church. We didn't have a church before, and the pastor and his wife had exactly, almost identical life experience that we had, with the same problems, the same mistakes, crazy. So they became our friends and they started mentoring us. So I ended up staying there for 6 months. and their influence in my life, how they dealt with the condition, how she was able to forgive her husband in a way that she did. By the way, they weren't pastors before. They were normal people, but then after the Lord changed them, they dedicated themselves entirely to the Lord, and they poured all their love in us. And so my wife could see a model, a role model that we could actually save our marriage. And I tell you this, guys, because if you're into trouble, you're about to get divorced, you gotta find a couple that can mentor you, that went through what you're going through, so that you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you can actually see that it's possible, because it is possible to heal those wounds. You know, the miracle was, they told us it took them over 10 years to heal their wounds. My wife is almost healed. I am almost healed. It's been 10 months. Now let's talk about the alcohol. So I became addicted to cigars. That's what I will do. But I will never overdo it. Same with the alcohol. I will overdo it once in a while and I will feel ashamed for it. But I will always, and my resistance was high, so I could drink and never get drunk and never do stupid things. But for example, my coffee breaks, after walking on the treadmill for hours and hours and hours, I will get a coffee and I will light up my cigar, and it will last me a week, a whole cigar, or half a week. If I was too stressed, it will go faster. But I was doing that for 7 years. And then I was having 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day. My psychoanalyst told me, you're doing the cigar and the coffee because it's the same dopamine thing, right? It's you're trying to regulate your dopamine, and then you got addicted to the coffee and you got addicted to the cigars. So the first thing I left, was the cigar wasn't even a problem. I just stopped smoking altogether. I never liked cigarettes, but cigars I liked. The whole coffee was, I didn't care, right? But the problem with the coffee is that got me even more hyperactive.
Well, yeah, coffee is a stimulant, which actually helps with regulating focus and the dopamine transmitters and a bunch of other things. So help you focus on that. Yeah, if you're getting hyperactive off coffee, that means you were drinking a lot of coffee.
4 or 5 cups, and they're double espresso, right?
And for me, I can do 4 or 5 cups, and actually, I do focus better, but I don't get extra hyperactive. So there's a difference right there.
You see?
And then the thing is with the nicotine, when I smoked, apparently nicotine actually helps with executive functioning, improves executive functioning. But for me, the smoking was a transition tool. So for the ADHD brain to say, I know, stop this and start on that, we can't do it. So we need a transition time. So in my calendar, I got a half hour between everything, minimum half hour between one meeting or another. That gives this brain to let go of the other stuff to get ready for the next. So I'll get all this stuff done, I'll go have a cigarette, then I'll come back and do work. So that was my transition.
Wow.
And then when I quit smoking, now I was starting to do 13-hour runs of work in one sitting.
Wow.
I was going from one thing to another because I didn't have that transition break of a cigarette.
That's low time. Yeah.
So that was boom, 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 push out, getting tired. And then, yes, got hooked up to nicotine. That was tough to give up because the body gets used to it and wants it. And that's what you got to fight later. But yeah, that was my way of figuring out how to do proper transition so I can get into my next task effectively.
You know, the relationship with the alcohol for me was different. I don't want to get into this, but I had a heart attack when I was 39 years old, 40 years old, and it was because I was abusing alcohol. Then I was doing like hardcore because I had such a stressful environment. Of course, the ADHD helped, but also I was killing myself. Literally, I was killing myself. But that's for another story. I mean, if you want to read my book, everything is in that part of my life is in that book. But what I want to talk about is my relationship with alcohol after I found out that I had ADHD, right? Because as you can see, beloved people, it's not one thing. You start doing it all. Because wherever appeases your brain, you want more of it. That's the condition. So it's the music, it's the walking, it's the nicotine, the cigars and the cigarettes, it's the alcohol at night, blah, 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 blah. Everything is like that, right? It's a stimulant in your brain that your brain is craving because it just cannot control dopamine. So let's talk about alcohol because it's a fascinating topic for me. My relationship with alcohol was always okay. I was a functioning alcoholic because I had it every night, but I could stop anytime, honestly. And I
Yeah, I had that for a long time too.
and I didn't have the craving. However, if I would go into a reunion, I could actually get drunk and start saying stupid things because I will have one drink too many, and you know how it goes, right? So I went back to my faith. What I told to my wife is, let's try to not drink hardcore liquor. Let's just do wine and beer. And let's not do it every day. Let's just do it for fun.
Mhm.
And you know, like I was with her, and it was a privilege to be with her, right? So I would tell her, please tell me when I had too much. Tell me not to have another one. Because I used to get mad when she would do that.
Yeah.
But now I gave her control to do that, right? Because I know I had the ADHD. So we will
helping control your moderation issues.
yeah. So she will help me control. Still does that, by the way, with other things. But we will go out and get chicken wings and beer. And I will love it. And I will have up to 2 beers every time we went out. And that was like daily, like not daily, but a weekly thing to do. Or that when I will go out on the weekend and I will have 2 beers for lunch or dinner. Or I will have 2 glasses of wine. That was my limit. Not every day though. And I was fine like that. And it was okay, you know. But I would still crave it. So I will remember
The craving.
but I will tell my wife, let's go for chicken wings on Friday. I wasn't the chicken wings. It was the beer. And in my faith, if you become a Christian, you'll realize that there is fasting involved in my faith. But you do the fasting to honor the Lord, to as a sacrifice, to honor Him, and to get rid of your flesh desires, interests. I didn't know that part because I hadn't read the Bible until this year. I started reading the Bible for the first time in my life. So in about April, after we were getting healed so fast, we were so thankful with the Lord for His blessings that she told me, let's start fasting. I didn't know how to fast. I mean, I always did fasting for health, but that was intermittent fasting. So I would have 1 or 2 meals a day, like 16-hour fast or 20-hour fast. Never did more than a 24-hour fast. And then so we asked at church, and they told us, do a 3-day fast. Mm-hmm. But you know me, right? Like people that at church that do 3-day fast, sometimes they had 500 calories a day, 600 calories a day. He told me 3-day fast. I only drank water for 3 days, right? Because I'm ailing, and I got my wife to do the same thing without knowing that maybe that's a little too much. Only water. But guess what? At the beginning, it was easy, supernaturally easy. Like I will do the fasting, I will thank the Lord, only water. I will get so spiritual, my prayer meditations will go so deep. And then I go back to the alcohol, the coffee, no problem. I never smoked again because my wife always hated it because it's actually nasty because you smell bad, right? But I will keep the same habits. That was April. Then May, the same thing. June came around. I was already in Canada, and then what we do is we give the Lord the first 3 days of the month as an offering, so we don't eat for the first 3 days of the month. So the July fast. Listen to this, it's fascinating. The July fast, the first 2 days, I had a horrible headache. And now I learned how to do the fasting, right? Like before I did just water, now I would do water, and then I would put, like throughout the day, I would have 1 or 2 glasses of water with half a lime and salt, because you have to replenish your electrolytes. That's what I will do. So that would actually be better. And I did all that, and like the first day was horrible, and my headache couldn't go away. Day 2, headache again. Day 3, in a miraculous way, I got directed to the book of Isaiah. And if you read, I think it's Isaiah 58 or 56, just Google it. It's fasting in Isaiah. So I start reading, and it says, you give me your fasting for offerings, but I am returning this to you in liberating from your flesh conditions. Mm-hmm. I read on the Friday that I didn't have a headache anymore. It was the last day of fasting. Number 1, guys, I could keep going. I felt this power in my spirit that I said, I could do 7 days, but of course I did it because I wanted to respect my wife, and actually it could be unhealthy. I told my wife when we gave up the fast, I'm like, baby, I could keep going. The next day, the first thing that I did after the fasting is had a coffee. because I love my coffee. We didn't have coffee that day. We did communion, which, you bless the bread and you remember what Christ did for you. The next day I wake up, I go down running for my cup of coffee, and I got my Starbucks, beautiful, espresso machine. I fill it up with my delicious coffee. The smell was delicious. I gave it a sip. I couldn't drink it. It was like drinking vomit. So I tried it again. And I'm like, I couldn't drink it. I'm like, this is weird. Dumped it, right? And then at dawn, my wife tells me, remember what we read in Isaiah? And I read it again. The Lord will remove all the flesh, bad habits from your life if you fast to Him. He returns it, to you. You do it to Him to say I love you and thank you and I'm sorry, and He comes back and He blesses you with it. So then I realized He had healed me from caffeine addiction. Because I tried in the afternoon. So this was my habit. I will get up, have 2 cups of coffee in the morning. Then I will have 1 cup of coffee like around 3 p.m. to pick me up. And then at 6 p.m. I will have another cup of coffee. Normal like that. If I have a stressful day, that would double that. That was normal for me. So my brain had the habit. So 3 p.m. go make myself a coffee. I had forgotten about this. Put it in my mouth. I almost vomited. Yeah. So I'm like, this is amazing. So the next day, what I did is I told my wife, do you think I could actually do decaf? Because I like the habit. So I had the decaf coffee, and that was fine. Yeah. So I researched less than 1% caffeine. Yeah. That's how the Lord took away my caffeine addiction. I didn't even know that I had a caffeine addiction. And by the way, people, it's okay. Coffee doesn't, I mean, if you overdo it, you will get hurt with the acidity, but it's fine. My point is, that's how I got rid of coffee. 2 more fasts moving forward. We're coming to the month of October now. I still have my beers once in a while. It was fine, but I didn't find them as tasteful as before. Right. It was more the habit, but it was still fine. I do my fasting in October, same thing. I got out of that fast, drank another beer. I still like the thirst, but the alcohol, I would feel like the alcohol would pour out of my eyes and my ears in a weird way. So to make the long story short, now I'm once in a while, like my son had a celebration because he's getting married, and so he got engaged. I had half a cup of wine with alcohol. The lightest wine I can find, which I think is Pinot Noir and Shiraz, because I used to do Cabernet Sauvignon because it's the strongest. And that one went fine as long as I have a heavy meal in front of me. Yeah. If I had just a cup of wine and I drink it, I feel the same thing, that the alcohol is bursting out of my eyes. So it's like, no, so I'm free from that now, bro. Yeah. Isn't that beautiful?
Something you said earlier, you were going out for chicken wings, but it was actually for the beer.
Yeah.
Right? And again, the same book, The Myth of Normal by Gabe Mador, he said, the substance is not the addiction. The addiction is that dopamine spike before the first hit or the first drink. So it's the buildup of anticipation of that first drink or hit is what you get addicted to. Food.
Wow.
You said, hey, I want to go to chicken wings, but actually it was the beer, because with chicken wings comes beer.
Anticipation.
So they're anticipation. And once you have the substance, then the body's going, all right, let's keep going. Right? So it's not the substance that's addictive, it's that anticipation. Or like one buddy of mine, he was telling me that when I told him that part, he goes, oh, that makes sense. I was getting so excited. I was going to go to the bar, I was going to meet up with my friends because I could start hiding my pain. He figured this out a lot later. So it was that anticipation, that dopamine hit before the drink he was addicted to. And that's what, when I read that, I was like, yeah, I was anticipating craving the drink. Once I get there, I was excited to have it. And then once you start, that was it. The body took over from that now, but you're addicted to that anticipation. And what are you anticipating? To me, it was the high pain and numb pain. So that's why when it comes to addiction, don't say you're just hooked or they can't control themselves, they got a disease. What pain are they trying to hide?
Yeah. And also the substance, right? Like the substance also, like your body craves the chemicals at some point once you ever use it.
Right, but it's free. It's that you're addicted to getting that first hit, and then once you start to drink,
You cannot stop.
You can't stop because now the body is getting what it wants.
Craving it.
So sometimes I know I still get nicotine cravings because the body's. I really had to get back then or even with alcohol.
Yeah.
So the brain does amazing things, but it's funny how the brain is actually set up to protect you. So it was using alcohol to protect me from my pain because that's what I wanted. I didn't realize it, right? The things that we came up with to overcome our symptoms, or you became a narcissist to protect yourself, your brain did that because you weren't happy or something and you had pain. So let's try and get you confident. We'll make you a narcissist so you can feel good about yourself. That's all the brain.
Yeah.
It wasn't a conscious decision on your part. And when I realized the brain does amazing things for you, it doesn't know if it's good or bad. It's protecting you. As long as you start feeling good and there's back to some homeostasis or balance, then we're good. But the brain doesn't know if it's good or positive to the people outside, or if people are reacting to you negatively. Well, I got to do something different to protect you from the negativity.
Yeah.
That's from old trauma. That's from whatever. And it's a brain thing.
Lastly, and then we're done with the addictions. People, I want to talk about psychedelics because despite the alcohol and smoking and even the porn addiction, it was horrible. But it was kind of manageable within the context of my marriage. Well, that's because I have a saint of a wife too, by the way. But most people will actually get divorces just with those three. The problem was the psychedelics. What opened the gates of hell for me was the myth of the psychedelics, because I'm a scientist and I love doing research.
Yeah.
When I started researching about psychedelics, and it was the first thing that I got into my, I never knew what this was. But then there was this documentary on Netflix called Fantastic Fungal.
Oh, yeah.
And they portrayed these mushrooms, these magic mushrooms. They make it look like a miracle medicine, and they give you all the proof and this and that I actually thought this could be awesome, right? And even worse, because back then I was into meditation and I was getting into Buddhism and like stupidity, like believing in reincarnation and stuff like that. I felt so bad into superstition that I felt ashamed when the Lord woke me up, because I believed in stuff that, if you're a scientist or a normal person, you know that it's stupidity, like reincarnation, right? Yeah. Who wants to come back to a broken world like this? So anyways, I research more and more research and Oh, magic mushrooms, they are not addictive and they heal your brain and this and that. And I had ADHD. So I started consuming these things. And I would get these weird, wacky, horrible hallucinations. Some of them were beautiful. I would see angels and stuff like that. But the other ones were in hell, and I would go to hell, and it was horrible. But I got addicted to that too. And that one, thank God, I only abused that for 3 months last year, because that was the end, that was the opening of hell. That's what my wife wanted. She had it. I did mushrooms because I felt like it was incredible. Then I did LSD in the same 3 months. Then I actually did ayahuasca. It's never do people die from that stuff. It's actually it's so toxic that you end up vomiting for 4 hours. It's horrible. But again, dopamine. I talked to my psychoanalyst about that stuff, and he said that when you have a chemical that comes from a plant that becomes medicine under certain conditions and only by some people that need it, then it's beneficial for you. Mm-hmm. Like any other medicine. Like any other medicine, people, right? If you got your prescription drugs, whatever it is, and you abuse it, you're gonna die. So it's the same with these things. Yes, it may have some properties that could help some cases under a prescribed medical condition. But if you go and buy magical mushrooms, you start smoking marijuana, and then you have ADHD, you're gonna get hooked to that stuff, and you're gonna rather be in that environment than be in the real life, because what that stuff did for me was what alcohol did without the kickback. So that's the danger, right? So I will get high in mushrooms, and I will be like in this visualization. It will come faster and it will last longer than getting drunk. And then I didn't have the side effects afterwards. I didn't get hangover. So it was so dangerous that I would rather live in that environment. So whenever that will happen to me, I will pop four pills of these mushrooms, right?
But that's what I was wondering. You were trying to escape reality with psychedelics.
Most people that do it for that reason.
Why were you escaping reality? What pain were you escaping?
It's the pain behind.
And like you said, it lasts longer, so you got to stay away from reality longer.
All that trauma, right?
Right. And that's what happens. We got to uncheck trauma, uncheck challenges with your mental health.
Yeah.
It goes down a bad road. It can. But it takes complete open honesty to yourself, from yourself, and admit that you need to, like, I remember when I decided to get professional help, I'm like, oh my God, like I am my parents. I'm seeing myself and my kids right now. I'm screwed up. I need help. And this was it. Like what I saw in my kids is that I can't continue this way and do this to them. So I got help. And, then realizes that it's not a moral failure, and I'm not completely, when the doctor told us, yeah, you got ADHD, severe. There's no way you should have graduated from university. There's no way you should have successful companies. There's no way you should be married anymore. But something, you figured something out. And I'm like, no. I can't be 4 letters that explains my whole life. There's got to be something worse about me. There's nothing wrong with it, right? So it's difficult, but it's like you said, it's definitely rewarding. We're all better people about it, and I got to give you credit for the courage that you had to invite me to talk about. I didn't expect us to be talking this in depth about our past, but I know with me talking about my ADHD challenges and observations and my diagnosis, I got him thinking about it. I got a lot of other people thinking about it. I had some guy actually come on my podcast, the Impulsive Thinker, talking about his depression 2 years ago, and he just messaged me saying, because of that podcast, I don't know what you did, but I was able to talk more about my depression, and all my friends were starting to talk to me about their depression. And he had such a horrible fear, anxiety attacks for speaking on stage. He decided to get professional help to get over that anxiety so he can spread the word more, because the more we talk about it, the more people hear it and people talk about it. So, I'm making an impact. Your podcast has been making an impact. And this story here, I'm not ashamed of what I've told. I screwed up a lot in the past. There's a lot of stuff I did wrong, but I fixed it. I'm trying to become a better person. And no one's infallible. No one's perfect. You can never get it right. Am I going to make mistakes? Probably tomorrow.
Yeah.
But let's talk about it, and it's okay.
But you see, guys, we do this and you see us so bold. Well, now you know why, because we're ADHD. So we're going to do this, we're going to go all in. That's number one. But also,
that's a good point.
But more importantly, we don't care. There's nothing to hide. Our wives have forgiven us. Our marriages still are flourishing now. My kids have a good relationship with me now, because now they can talk to me, and I know I have to listen, and I know how to pay attention. My business is thriving now, and it's exponentially thriving. I actually have my financial review for the month today, and we did a lot better than the last 2 years in 1 month. So when the Lord heals you, He's going to use you to heal others, and that's what we are doing. We got healed. We have to work on it every single day of our lives. And we told you all the strategies that we both do, that I didn't even know we had so many similarities, by the way, because we went deep today, even deeper than our dinner conversations. And so It's an everyday battle, but we take it one day at a time. And because of we're conscious of it, we're using it to our advantage. So now, instead of becoming a horrible disease, now it's a superpower, people. And we can accomplish anything we want because we know that if we like it and it's going to bless the world, we have this immense energy to get it done.
And if you take care of yourself first, then you're able to take care of other people, right? The mental health state I was in, I was not good to my family, I was not good to my staff. Then I actually got selfish, called selfish. I put myself first. I got the help. I worked on me first before I really worried about everyone else. But I got into a good space, then everyone went in line. It radiates out. Like I got a 15-year-old daughter who wants to hang out with her old man and say no to friends or be around her friends with her old man. Things are getting good. So take care of yourself first. And this is what I say to a lot of people. Take care of your mental health first. Your physical health will follow because your brain, if it's not working properly and it's overcoming emotions, it's not working properly to make your physical body work better. So get your head, your brain working, your emotions under it, especially the childhood trauma, the old trauma, it's buried deep and it keeps coming out. So we got to be curious and wonder about that and work with it.
And you have to be forgiving of yourself first and forgive others. Today I had an episode in the morning with my wife because I lower my awareness of ADHD, and then she spoke to me about something related to our real estate business, and I exploded. I didn't give myself the 30 seconds that I give myself before I answer. So I exploded in a way that was not meant. There is no crisis, there is no emergency, but I made it so big in my head because I wanted to solve it right there and there. When she told me, again, because of the condition, I messed up her morning and then I had to apologize. And of course now she knows, but I really hurt her, like I actually hurt her. And then 4 hours later we went for lunch and we talked about it and we fixed the problem. The problem is fixed. But I ruined her morning and I ruined my morning because I had a sleep. I slept, right? Yeah. It's fine. I'm human. She knows, she forgave me, and then she actually told me, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have talked to you back then because we were talking about something, and then she changed the conversation and she talked about this thing. And I didn't click, and I was vomited on her. That happens less often now with people, because I'm always aware of my condition. I'm always just count to 10 before you answer anything. Just 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Okay, think about it now. Talk.
That works well, but a lot of times it can't get to 10. And when I communicate to people, especially my team, I say, ignore my first facial reaction.
Yeah.
Because my brain hasn't caught up yet. That's my impulsive reaction. Ignore it. That's not real. Then once my brain catches up, then I got the actual reaction. Because I get that too. If we feel emotions intensely, huge more than others, raw and immediately. And then it comes out. With my family, it hurts, but they're starting to understand that just to ignore that first reaction. It's not intended. It's just the way the brain is working, and I am working hard to get that 1, 2, 3, 4. But again, it's all about communication and understand it. We're just wired different.
And we're here to tell you that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Your life will never be perfect. You live in a broken world. By definition, you will not have a perfect life until you go to heaven. You are a Christian like me. But having said that though, Andrea and I are living the life of our dreams. And I honestly tell you, I have never been happier. I have never been healthier. I'm building my wealth back, which doesn't matter really. I really don't care about that. What I care is that I'm building my family back. Now I'm finally having a home. Before it wasn't a home, it was an empty house because I was never here. And my kids couldn't talk to me. Now I have a beautiful relationship with my kids, with my grandkids. My wife loves me. I have meaningful relationships with meaningful conversations with my employees. You know what I did 2 months ago? I went public. I did a town hall meeting with all the people. I had people in 9 countries. And I apologized. I said, guys, I must apologize for the last 3 years, especially the last 3 years. Because I made the company crack because I lost attention, because I got into psychedelics, and I told the whole story like I've been telling you guys. And I asked for better forgiveness. And I told them, but I promise you I'm going to do whatever it is in my power to restore what you used to have. And I'm going to make it better. And this month, it started to happen more. And I'm building my culture again.
And that's how you broke free.
And that's why it's called Break Free. André, thank you so much for being in the call. Before we finish the podcast, I just want to do a quick mention. My psychoanalyst told me, you don't need to have medicine, but you should do, I recommend you try Concerta. I know Dan Sullivan has Adderall. I wouldn't like to take it, but when I went back home to Guatemala, I had access to the best psychiatrist in the country, the guy that I read in Germany, like an incredible guy. So I went to him and I asked him, I went like 3-4 sessions with him, and he says, I think you should try it. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, half the people works for, half people doesn't work for, but for me, Concerta gives me a little bit, okay, the only thing that the medicine gives me is those 10 seconds between thoughts. Yeah. It slows down my brain enough that I can think about what I'm going to say, and that makes the whole difference. And I noticed it because one time I didn't take it on purpose to see what happened, and my day was normal, but I was repeating myself, and I was asking questions again that they already answered. Mm-hmm. I will go like stare at something, I will never come back, and the house will be burning on fire. Like, it was noticeable. So it is helping me for sure. And the dosage that I'm having is like, it's never hard.
It all depends on the person.
Yeah, I have a very small dosage, right? Another thing, people, if you're a male watching this and you have kids, get them all tested. Like you said, you got your kids tested, and
it wasn't easy because they were having problems. So you just got to work with your general practitioner and the mental health professionals to say, that's what, And it was a 2-year discussion, but as long as you're sounding smart and you're showing the real reasons why you got concerns, don't give up with your kids. But yeah, I finally found a pediatrician that specialized in the ADHD and didn't believe it was just a boy problem. We were explaining properly the symptoms and our observations, and he gave it credit, and he started. So yeah, I think it's just for the validation that they got a brain that's wired differently, and they're not going to fit in or do the things that other people can, right? For me, just to keep planning, stay on top of it, it'd take me 4 times longer to do stuff like that than anyone else.
Right? My daughter is 25 years old. She worked for me for 5 years. She actually graduated from an Ivy school in Canada, the best school in English in Canada. But she was always depressed. She was always anxious. When she heard my story about ADHD last year, even before I went to a psychoanalyst, the first thing she did is she went to a psychiatrist, and he prescribed Concerta to her, and within 2 months she was a much happier person.
Yeah.
The only reason why I took Concerta for myself is because I asked her, and she says, Dad, it's changing my life. So my awareness already healed my daughter. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're doing this podcast. Now you guys are aware. If you check what we're talking about, the symptoms, we talked about the symptoms. Otherwise, just Google 10 symptoms of ADHD, you're going to have a ton of videos on YouTube. But we talked about all the symptoms.
Yeah, be careful where, if you get off TikTok, no, that's not viable. YouTube's a bit better. But this is what I tell a lot of people are wondering, I wonder, André, if I have ADHD, what should I do? Well, the thing is, if you've been listening to this, you're like, oh my God, you're speaking to me. Good chance.
Yeah.
If you're saying, well, it depends on the situation, most likely not. It could be a mental health condition, depression, anxiety. Or if you go to tacticalbts.com, I got a blog there where I got recommended podcast episodes that I've done, that if you're wondering if you have ADHD, those are the ones that kind of describes a little more of situational examples and some experts on there. But yeah, usually everyone goes, yeah, That's it. The book I read that the psychiatrist gave me, I actually read to disprove I had ADHD. And I'm like, yep. Wasn't even conditional. It was yep. You know, that's the kind of thing. And nothing wrong. It's not a condition. It's not a disease. It's just a different brain wiring. And it's a hunter's brain, and we're in a farming world now. We can't wait till that seed grows. We'll pick it out of the ground and see if it started, right? That's just the way it is. That's why I'm really good at an entrepreneur, because I like that urgency. I like the challenge. I never realized I live all over the place. People thought I couldn't pay attention. Well, you know what? That's me paying attention, because I'm scanning the environment to see if there is a danger that everyone's going, right?
They're good peppers.
So my engineer manager says, like, how did you catch all this stuff? Like, we went to look at this piece of equipment, but you got 5 more jobs. I don't know. I just saw it. But I'm constantly scanning, looking. That's a hunter thing.
Yeah.
But I'm accused of not paying attention. But I am. I can listen to you while I'm making sure nothing's going to attack us.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not a condition. It's not a disease. It's the way your brain's working. And it's someone else's measuring stick that's measuring us, not our own. Make sure that your goals are your goals. How your brain's working is how your brain's working. And we need a couple more help. Even the neurotypical people, they need a lot of help with other stuff that we're great at.
Yeah.
But it's just socially accepted. Us, not so much.
André, thank you so much for being here, brother. We need warriors in the world. We need hunters in the world, because otherwise you wouldn't have businesses. Mm-hmm. We are warriors and we're hunters. That's what ADHD is. It's the warrior brain. We can never be farmers. I will get bored being a farmer. Why do you think I have so many businesses? And why do you think I have a computer business that works per project? Because every new client that I take care of is another conquest. Mm-hmm. I'm expressing the warrior that the Lord built on me. Regardless of how I got it, on why I got it, regardless if it's hereditary or for my childhood trauma, because I didn't tell you, I told you 5% of what happened to me when I was a kid. I don't want to bore you with that. But the fact is that I had ADHD, and it made me successful, and now it's making me a great father, a great husband, and a great entrepreneur.
And being a high achiever, what you're describing is a high achieving ADHD entrepreneur. I just want to clarify to everyone, just because ADHD doesn't mean you're a good entrepreneur. There's a lot of people with ADHD that likes the structure of work. They go to work, they're able to do things because there's a structure around them with expectations and someone else is taking care of the planning. So even with ADHD, we all have different roles in this world. But I think the high achieving side is that's what us as entrepreneurs make it part of a type of entrepreneur that's successful.
Yeah. So it's on a spectrum, people. It's on a spectrum. I tend to hang out with entrepreneurs. That's why this is an entrepreneurial or a business leader, if you will, like a CEO would. But it's a spectrum. Just change your conditions. Go find a good psychoanalyst specializing in ADHD. Change your life, and you will change the world. André, if people like to find out more about you, your podcast, where can they find you?
You can find me at tacticalbts.com, Tactical Breakthroughs, and you can find my podcast there. But the podcast is called The Impulsive Thinker, the podcast for the high-achieving ADHD entrepreneur. And lately I've been discovering non-ADHD people are listening to learn about their ADHD colleagues or family. And I just had a comment saying, I'm not ADHD, but you've got a lot of business entrepreneurial stuff that's helping me with my business. So it's all about self-development and better understanding yourself. I'm talking with a lot of great smart people. You've been on it. And yeah, I'm here to help the high-achieving entrepreneur understand themselves poorly so we can get you working efficiently and be good with yourself.
Awesome.
Oh, and thank you. This was fun.
Yeah. Guys, if you notice, my podcast don't go past 45 minutes or an hour, or I do 2 episodes. This is the exception, and I wanted to do it like this because I don't want to stop this. This is so important for my life, for Andre's life, that I will be a disservice to you. And I know if you're having doubts about this because of your partner or yourself, watch the whole thing, because it's going to bless your life. So until next time, God bless, and keep growing. Cheers.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.